Hi everyone. A ver, admitting everyone. Perfect. Hi everyone and welcome to the second episode of this spring mini series of the Ocean Citizen Blue Talks. As you already know, we're gonna keep on talking about restoring marine forests across depth. And today's episode focuses on shallow meadows, especially the lungs of the ocean, presented by Nuria Marbà Bordalba, who's connected with us today. We're going to wait a few more minutes so that everybody has time to join, and then we'll get started. So for those of you who don't know, this episode is part of a series, episode 2. There's 2 more episodes coming. And just in case you're curious about it, we also aired a series last fall about understanding blue forests. And you can find those on our YouTube channel or through the website of Ocean Citizen Project. I'm just going to drop the link in a minute. Just give me a moment. As last time, and as you might know, this session, is going to be recorded. Okay, we had some issues with the video from last week, and we are working on that. So the video will be made available as soon as it's fixed. Do not worry. This episode will also be made available after the live session. And I will share with you now in the chat the link to the last webinar series in case you want to check it out. It's here. All right, in the meantime, maybe some of you want to share with us where they are connecting from. I see we already have quite a few people online and more are joining. So I am currently in Tenerife, like last week, hasn't changed. And Nuria, I think you are in Balearic Islands.
Yes.
Maybe you can share that with us, yeah?
Yes. Hello.
I don't know where the rest is joining from. Barcelona, hi. Portugal. Nice. Granada, amazing. And Milan, well, we'll have a fair European representation, Mediterranean representation, even. Great. So we're going to wait another minute, Nuria, before we get started, because I see there's still people joining. I've already said this is going to be recorded, but for those of you who's just joined, so that you know, we will be focusing today on the seagrasses, shallow meadows, seagrasses, and the keys to recover them, to restore them. Nuria works from the Balearic Islands and also coordinates the work within the framework of Ocean Citizen here in Tenerife to study and restore the seagrass meadows of Cimodocea nodosa, which is we call it the sebadal here in Tenerife. I am Isabel. I will be moderating this webinar and try to attend the doubts and questions that might pop during the session. If you have any question, I will please ask you to use the Q&A box, because if we use the chat, it gets messy and it's quite likely that we miss some of these questions. So if you make sure to put them in the Q&A box, we'll get back to that at the end of the session, at the very end of the session, because the way this is going to go is we have a roughly 30-minute presentation by Nuria, and then I will be sharing with you a quiz so that we can review the different concepts covered during the presentation. And then after that, we will go to attending your questions. Well, Nuria will be attending the question. I will be moderating them and making sure we don't forget a thing. I believe this is all from my side. So Nuria, whenever you're ready, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Isabel. And well, welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us. Yeah, I will talk a bit about seagrasses and the potential for restoration of these ecosystems. So I organized the presentation according to this outline. So explaining a bit about the distribution and the areal extent of seagrass meadows, their importance in terms of ecosystem services provision. Then we will talk a bit about the trajectories and the changes on these ecosystems globally in terms of the extension that, well, we will see that we have lost quite a few of the areal extent. And then I will go through a bit the seagrass restoration opportunities and different approximations or ways of restoring this lost habitat, and discuss a bit the time scales of this, how long it takes to recover these ecosystems, and also the services provided, because the restoration is the vegetation itself, and then also it's important to recover the ecosystem services that the ecosystem provides. And at the very end, I will mention a bit the idea or the plan that we have in the Ocean Citizen to restore one seagrass meadow in Tenerife. So, okay, the seagrasses are present in the coast of all continents except Antarctica, but they actually cover a narrow belt of the coastline because they are plants, so they need light to grow and survive and function. So the depth range where seagrasses grow varies from there are some intertidal meadows also, but otherwise from the 0 meters down to 60 meters, but this is quite exceptional. In the Mediterranean, where we have very clear waters, the seagrass meadows, the deepest meadows, they reach 45 meters. So the depth is constrained by the clarity of the water. And so, despite they are present in most of the sandy coastal areas, they only occupy less than 0.1% of the seafloor area. So they are really an ecosystem that, in extent, it's very small. And also, then here I also inserted the distribution of one of the species, because seagrasses, there are about between 60 and 70 species of seagrasses, and the one that we will be working with in Tenerife is Cimodocea nodosa, that this species has a distribution in the Mediterranean and then in the Atlantic, but from Senegal up to South Lisbon. So despite the seagrasses occupy this small percent of the seafloor, they provide they play important roles on the functioning of the coastal areas at local scale, but they also play a role at the global scale in regulating the climate and the gas concentrations in the atmosphere. So, well, they like key services that they provide is food, carbon sequestration, and also coastal protection, and also enhanced biodiversity. So in the seagrass meadows, we can find really many different organisms. Here are some of the charismatic ones, but also on these animals that live inside of the meadows, because the meadows provide both habitat and also shelter for many organisms. But many also live just attached or grow as epiphytes on the leaves and also on the rhizomes. Some of these species, some of the species that live in or at least spend part of their life in, or their life cycle in the seagrass meadows, are also species of commercial interest. So, because they are part of the fisheries. So the seagrasses have also a role on providing food. Then another important function and service that seagrass meadow provides is that they are intense carbon sinks. And this is, because seagrasses are an ecosystem that it's very highly productive, and part of the production of material and biomass that they produce, it gets buried in situ in the sediment of the meadow. And also they also trap particles that are suspended in the water column, that they are rich in organic carbon, that they also fall in the seabed. And then with the rhizomes and the roots, the meadow prevents that this gets suspended, so it gets trapped and buried also in the meadow, in the sediment of the meadow, so below the leaf canopy. And because this high productivity and also these particles that the meadow trap, that are also carbon rich, seagrasses are among the ecosystems that they also capture carbon and retain and sequester carbon at the long term in a high rate. It's estimated that the long-term carbon burial in seagrass meadows, it's more than 10 times that in terrestrial forest. And here it's, this graph shows this comparison between, seagrasses, mangroves, and salt marshes, that, salt marshes and mangroves are also marine, are considered marine vegetation, that they're very high. But here there is the long-term carbon burial rates in the forest. And so it's very relevant. And it's estimated that also seagrass meadows are responsible of about 50% of the total carbon that is buried in the ocean. Then this carbon that is buried in the meadows, this can be preserved over millennia. We have in the Mediterranean, it's not strange to find this kind of reefs of Posidonia oceanica, that they may be 2-3 meters tall. And this is all the plant material and particles that suspended in the water column that the meadow has been trapped and retained over time, over the millennia, 2-3 thousands of years. And then this carbon that is buried in the meadows, it decomposes very slowly because there is no oxygen, and also the material has low nutrient content. This slows the decomposition rate, so then this is preserved for many, many years. Also, all the dense network of the below ground organs of the plant, so the roots and all the rhizomes, the rhizomes, this prevents that what it's trapped, it gets resuspended. So this also helps the retention. And then, we have disturbances, and we can destroy these reefs, but by mechanical damages, like we will see later. But fortunately, we don't have fires underwater, and this also helps to preserve these high stores of carbon, that in contrast to the on land, that forest is really a major disturbance in the forest, and a way to emit the carbon that is contained in the forest. This doesn't happen in the ocean. And then this, well, because these high accumulation rates of carbon and the long-term preservation of this carbon, this results in really big stores of organic carbon that in seagrasses it is in the sediment. It's not like in the forest that there is some in the soil, and most of it is on the above ground trees. In the seagrasses, no. Actually the carbon that is retained, or these stores of organic carbon are in the sediment, and the amount of the amount of carbon that is in these stores when we compare it per area, if we take the 1 meter of thickness of the sediment, the amounts are comparable to those in the forest, or even these are individual observations in, for instance, in Posidonia meadows, that it can be even higher than per unit of area the amount of carbon that is stored in a seagrass meadow than in a forest. So seagrass meadows are also hotspots of carbon storage. In addition, another important function and service that seagrasses provide is that they prevent coastal erosion. So they really, with this thick rhizome and root networks and the canopy of the leaves, they really retain the sediment, and also prevent the resuspension of what it's the sediment that it's already in. And also the seagrass meadows, they act like factories of sand for the beach. Well, these are accumulations that we can find in some beaches, well, in many beaches, especially in the Mediterranean, where we have a lot of Posidonia, that we have accumulations of seagrass rock on the shore, and then this seagrass rock is full of the skeletons of these organisms that grow especially on top of on the leaves, or also on the rhizomes. And then when the seagrass rock degrades, then all these skeletons that are of calcium carbonate, they form the sand of the beaches. Here there are some close-ups of the type of what we have in the sand. I mean, the composition of the sand that are all remains of marine skeletons. And also the canopy of the leaves, of the seagrasses, they also play a very important role on attenuating the wave energy. And well, it's increasing the evidence that the presence of seagrasses in the coastal areas, they act as natural defenses when there are marine storms. Here, this graph, maybe it's a bit complicated, but it shows the height, the height of the sea level when there are storms in the beaches around the Balearic Islands, when in areas here it's when we have seagrasses. And then it has been modeled what would be the height of the sea if there were no seagrasses there. And then in this close-up, it shows the increase of the sea level if in the case that the seagrasses were not present. So in all the beaches, or most of them, there is an increase that can vary from 0.2 to more than 1 meter height of the sea level if the seagrasses would not be there. And this, in terms of inundation of the coastline, it's a big difference because, for 1 meter of sea level, Of course, it depends on the slope of the coastline, but it can represent like 50 or 100 meters of inundation inland. So this is very relevant, and also in the scenario of climate change and the sea level that is rising, this is also makes a difference. Okay, so despite seagrasses are providing all these services, there are other services that I have not mentioned, but there are more roles that they play. But despite seagrasses are important ecosystems, also from our point of view, that they provide these services that are really useful for humans. Seagrasses are among the ecosystems that are being lost at the highest rates during the last century. And it is estimated that about 30% of the seagrass areal extent that was at the beginning of 1900 has been lost since 1940. And here, in this table, it shows that it's not something that has occurred in some specific areas, but it's quite general across all the coasts of all the continents where it has been assessed. And the causes of these losses of seagrasses has been attributed to the poor water quality deterioration, mostly due to eutrophication, so excess of inputs of organic matter and nutrients to the coastline. Also, deterioration of the quality of the sediment, also due to this excess of organic inputs, that this leads to hypoxia and sulfite development. The sulfite is toxic for seagrasses and many other organisms. Then also losses of seagrasses have occurred due to coastal development and mechanical impacts like dredging, development of infrastructures, line filling, anchors. There has been also losses due to biological impacts like herbivory, massive herbivory at some point, and also disease. There was what it's called wasting disease that occurred in the 1930s that decimated most of the extent of one of the seagrass species, that is Ostera marina, that is the most widely distributed and is affected in the Atlantic coastlines in the 30s. And then, more recently, since we started the current century, warming and storms are also being identified as also drivers of seagrass loss in some areas. So, we have an important ecosystem and we have lost quite a lot of its extent. So it's urgent to stop these losses and also enhance the recovery of this ecosystem. And then there are now frameworks that they help, global frameworks that they also help to enhance and promote the restoration and the recovery of seagrass meadows. Well, one of these is the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. It's very ambitious, but it's good also that even we will not accomplish this target, but this promotes that that we start putting in place interventions to achieve, or not at that time, but at least the recovery of this ecosystem. Well, it's seagrasses, but this is relevant for all the biodiversity in the planet. But regarding the seagrasses, the target is that by 2030, 30% of the degraded extension of ecosystems must be restored. And there is an estimation done by Fu and colleagues that they calculated that there would, to achieve this target, there are, well, we should restore from 90,000 to more than 100,000 kilometers square of seagrass meadows. And then there is also, well, because we are in this climate crisis, there are other frameworks related with climate and mitigation of greenhouse gas emissions that also help to restore, or yes, this help to restore seagrass ecosystems. Well, one is seagrasses are it's one of the ecosystems that are considered, together with mangroves and salt marshes, blue carbon ecosystems, on which it's possible already to implement what it's called blue carbon strategies. That these strategies, the objective is to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions through restoration and conservation of these marine vegetated ecosystems. So there are like two ways to implement or to use seagrasses or blue carbon ecosystems for climate change mitigation. That one is through the market or projects or carbon projects, and then go to the carbon market through credits. And there are several methodologies to put projects in place. And then there is also blue carbon is also considered among the ecosystems on which could be included in the IPCC greenhouse gas inventories. So there is the methodology in the IPCC for the countries to include, in this case, seagrasses in their national carbon inventories accountings when they have to report the reduction of emissions. So, well, this different configuration of the policies and frameworks, they also are very useful to push for the restoration of this huge area that we have lost with regarding the seagrass ecosystems. And then, in order to restore seagrasses, there could be like two main strategies. One is like removing actually removal of pressure is the first thing to do in order to restore the seagrasses or any ecosystem. And in the case of seagrasses, first of all, we have to remove the pressures. And in the case of the seagrasses, there is evidence that if there is vegetation around, the removal of the pressures or the causes of the decline, after that, the meadows are able to recover quite well. And in time scales, we will see that are not very long. This shows, well, it's a study conducted across all Europe with all the seagrasses and observations, places where there were monitoring data on seagrass, changes in seagrass extension. And okay, well, what it's the result of this, what this work shows is that since the first monitor started in some sites in 1869 until 2016, well, there has been a net loss of seagrasses. This includes all the species. We have 4 species around Europe. So there has been a net loss. It's documented that there has been lost 357 kilometers square, and this represents 29% of the mapped area of seagrasses. However, well, this is a huge area, and 29%. But if we looked at the rates of change of how these changes or these losses occurred across time. This is the rate of loss across the different decades until 2000, and in black is the net change, the net change of all seagrasses across Europe. And what we see is that actually there was a huge loss rate from in the 70s and the 80s. And after that, in the 90s, the rate of loss the net loss started to decelerate. And in the 2000, the net change was already positive. This includes all seagrass species that there are fast growing and slow growing. So the slow growing as Posidonia, it's not like expanding, or it doesn't have yet a positive, well, at this time of the study, it didn't have a positive rate of net change, but it was very close to zero, so it also recovered. And what this shift in the trajectory from big losses to this acceleration and even expansion, this coincides with the implementation of policies at national, regional, and also European level of improving the quality of the coastal waters, and also the reinforcing of conservation activities and laws and protection of the ecosystems. So this change in the trajectory is most probably reflecting the improvement of the quality of or the removal of some of the pressures that were causing the decline. This is not exclusive from Europe. There has been also observations in other parts of the world, especially US and also Australia. And this is an example of a site in US where they moved diverted the wastewater outflow that was discharging in a cove, and they move it to outside the cove. There was a loss, or in 1988 there was no seagrasses almost, and then after this change of discharge of wastewater, the meadows recovered. And this happened in a quite spectacular short time, that it's 15 years. And there is also another one here, for instance, that also reducing the nutrient loading in Tampa Bay, they also recovered 60%, more than 60%, about 60% of the seagrass extent in this area, and this occurred in 3 decades. So the removal of pressures is really a very important mechanism that helps recovery. If there are plants, the recovery will be conducted by the plants still there. But when in areas where most of the seagrass has been lost, or it's the area it's very large to recover, then it can be helped by active planting. And there has been, so the seagrass recovery can be catalyzed through planting in seagrasses. However, planting projects in seagrasses they have been conducted already for many years. The first one reported was in 1935, but when actually most of the projects started, it has been after 1975 that it's when also we started seeing that the seagrass extension was being lost quite dramatically. In this, many of these planting projects of seagrasses, the aim was just restoring the habitat, and many also were trials, like more experimental or scientific. And occasionally, and this happens more recently for the last 10, 20 years, is that the aim was also to restore the ecosystem services lost. The material that is being used for planting, it's sods, fragments, seeds, or even seedlings, so young planteds. However, it's also important to recall or highlight that the survival of many of the projects, many projects have not survived. So only from a global review that it was conducted in 2016, only about 35% of the trials or the projects survived. That is also important to say that this could also be biased because most of the projects were monitored for less than 12 months. So yes, often the plans that you put in place, there is quite a big loss at the beginning, but if there are some surviving, some critical mass that survive, then they can take over, because these are seagrasses are clonal plants, so that they grow. Well, it's like a tree, like a tree with a trunk that it's on the floor, and then the branches spread by themselves, and start occupying the space. So if the material that you put in place survive and start growing, and you are patient to wait that this occupies the space, then the project can be successful. Actually, an important thing is that also it's important to put a certain amount of plants in place to make that after the losses there is still something. So the planting scales matters for the survival, and also to start that the plants start spreading. And okay, there are some failures, and yeah, this 30% survival of the trials, but there are also planting projects that have been really successful. One, and it's actually the best example, is that one in Virginia that was they planted eelgrass, so Zostera marina, using seeds. And after 10 years, there was already meadows developed. So the patches that they put in place initially, they started coalesce, and then after 10 years, there was quite a nice meadow. And it's not just that they recovered the vegetation, but also some of the services that they look at. One of it was the carbon sequestration, and actually the amount of carbon that there was accumulated in the areas that they were planted and then they spread was significantly higher, about 3 times higher than the unvegetated area 9 years after planting. And also it's good to keep in mind that in those areas where seagrasses has been, or seagrass vegetation has been lost, because they have these historic stores under the sediment, okay, you lose the vegetation, and then all these big stores, they can degrade and then emit carbon. So what the intervention, the planting intervention, what it helps is it's just recovering the capacity of sequester carbon, but also it avoids the emission and remineralization of the historic carbon in these stores and the sediment. So through the planting, you are regulating or improving the carbon sink capacity by recovering the carbon sink, but also avoiding the emission of this historic carbon. And this, was observed in a study conducted in the southwestern Australia. And yeah, then also regarding the time scales, I mentioned a bit the time scales of recovery of the seagrass vegetation, and then also the ecosystem services associated. But this is something that it's important to keep in mind, because it's put in place a restoration project, we need to think about some decades to, well, or at least one decade. It depends on the species, because, well, species that they grow fast, they have a clonal growth, they spread fast, and also they have high seed production, then the recovery is much faster than species that grow very slowly, like Posidonia, or they produce few seeds, that this could take a century. It depends on the area that has to be recovered. But, well, there is this nice work also by Duarte and colleagues that they revise, well, they do, it's a very nice work about the rewilding the marine biodiversity. And, well, they look at seagrasses, and here there is the range of the time scale of seagrass recovery through restoration projects that can be from, less than a decade to actually more than 60 years. These, there are seagrasses that could take longer. So, well, we have a big job to recover all these ecosystems, the seagrasses. And then the way is through, well, improving these conditions, and if needed, putting some plant material in place. And, well, in the frame of Ocean Citizen, well, the goal regarding the seagrasses is to implement a pilot seagrass restoration intervention at the site that the project has in Tenerife, in the Canary Islands. So we just got the permits to start with this this job. So the things that we will do is to collect seeds. We will use seeds. We will restore Simodosia nodosa meadow. Then we will collect the seeds. We will do this in May. Then we will germinate the seeds and grow them until we have seedlings, like planted. We'll do this in tanks on land. Also, until July. And then by the end of July, we will take this grown material and put it in the recipient sites. Well, actually one site. We will collect the seeds from probably 3 sites among these that are indicated with a star, to have some diversity, also genetic diversity. And we have to decide where we are planting them, but it will be one of these 2 sites. We will do all the intervention in only one site. And then it's very important also to monitor how this vegetation that it's in place, it's developing. We will monitor them. We will monitor them 3 times before the project ends. And if the plants are still there and it looks promising, then we will have to find more funding to continue monitoring, because it's important also to it's important to put the plants in place, but it's also very important to monitor them, also to learn how it goes, and also to see if additional interventions have to be done to achieve the goal of having a nice meadow in place in probably the next decades. And thank you. I think that's it. I'm stopping here.
Great.
I stop.
Thank you, Nuria.
Okay.
Yes, it's perfect. Don't worry.
I
just wanted to. You can stop sharing if you want to. We're gonna jump to the quiz in just a minute. So you might have some questions. Just hold on to them for now, because I have a quick quiz. We're a little bit late on schedule.
Sorry.
But the quiz is gonna be quite short and quick. So what I'm gonna do is share with you a link so that you can join. And that's here. Okay, participation link. Sorry. I'm gonna share the link in the chat. So you can all join, and it's just going to be a quick recap, sorry, of the concepts and the basis that Nuria just set with her presentation. Oh, and I'm going to share my screen now. There it is. So I hope you could all join the quiz. Let me see if you're in. First question, how are seagrasses distributed globally? So we have 4 options, A, B, C, and D. And looks like we are all aligned on that one. It was pretty clearly set in your presentation. So seagrasses occur across a wide range of coastal environments, from temperate to tropical regions indeed. Next question. Which combination best describes the key ecosystem services provided by seagrass meadows? So we have a set of ecosystem services that Nuria described in her presentation. Is it rather A, B, C, or D? I think here again we have a consensus on B, indeed. Carbon sequestration, coastal protection, biodiversity support, and food provision. Third question, what's the primary driver of global seagrass decline? So here we are talking about all seagrass species together, not just one specifically. So is it A, physical disturbance due to diverse pore buoyancy, B, deep sea volcanic activity, C, local human pressures, including pollution and runoff from land, or D, changes in ocean salinity? So the primary driver indeed would be C, local human pressures, including pollution and runoff from the land. Moving on to fourth question. In which situation is active restoration, so the planting that Nuria described, most likely to be necessary? A, B, C, or D? I do believe this one is quite obvious. And it is answer C, indeed, when little to no seagrass remains and natural recovery is limited. So if a system can recover naturally, the best is to leave it to it and recover. Question 5, why can the scale of restoration projects influence their success? Do larger projects reduce the need for monitoring? This is reply A. B, small-scale projects may struggle to create self-sustaining meadows. C, only small projects allow for genetic diversity. D, project size has no impact on outcome. So when we mention project size, is the extension of the meadow replanted. So obviously it's B, small-scale projects may struggle to create self-sustaining meadows. I wanted to go back to what you said just a minute ago, Nuria, when you closed the presentation, mentioning what's the plan in Ocean Citizen. You mentioned only one of the 2 replanting location where it's going to be selected, and this is the reason. So we want to replant all the seedlings in one location to enhance and ensure success of the intervention. And the last question, how do seagrass meadows typically recover after restoration? So A, do the ecosystem services in area recover immediately after the planting? B, recovery follows different timescales with structure and functions returning gradually. C, carbon storage recovers before the plants establish. Or D, recovery only occurs if artificial structures are maintained indefinitely. And indeed, it was B, recovery follows different timescales. So this was our quiz. I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to go to the Q&A. So maybe Nuria, you can put the layout again.
Yes, I'm sure. Sorry. Yes, I have. Okay, sharing.
Right.
Okay, now you see it?
Yes, We're on the last slide with the
Okay.
ocean citizen.
And I put the first one.
That's fine. Don't worry.
I
So
can put
going to the first question, are invasive species an important threat for seagrasses?
Okay. Yes, they are. Yes, they can be. Yeah, in the areas where these invasives are. Okay, yeah. The thing is also, for instance, in the case of macroalgae, the invasive macroalgae. Now I'm speaking more in the Mediterranean, where my expertise is more there. We have plenty of invasives, or exotics that some have an invasive behavior. And in macroalgae, what we see is, well, we have, for instance, this Lophocaladia alemandi. We had also this, the first one that arrived and caused big concern was Caulerpa taxifolia. And what we see is that they have like a peak of like a bloom, and then it goes down. The abundance of these exotics or invasives in the site. So when they have this peak of abundance, this actually is it's causing really big deterioration they can cause big declines of the seagrasses, like for instance Posidonia. But sometimes it's more like pulses. I have the experience with Lophocladia, that actually the presence of Lophocladia when we had the peak of this abundance, it could be like 30-40% mortality of shoots of Posidonia. But then it has decreased the abundance, and now it's not really causing a it's not really a problem now. I don't know if this will go up again, but this also depends on the species, because in the case of herbivorous fishes or this, that they may cause an impact. But I would not put them at the top of the ranking of the causes of decline, but they can be also detrimental.
So there can be like a punctual problem issue.
Yes.
In a specific area, because the invasive species you mentioned are mostly, well, you mentioned some algae species, for example, and then the grazers. Invasive grazers would be like secondary potential threats.
Yeah, they
to
could
the health
also.
It's mostly competitors that cause an issue.
No, also if there are herbivorous fish,
grazers.
they could, yes, they could decimate the plants.
Okay.
But well, yeah.
Thank you. We're going to move to the next question because there's a few one here in the Q&A. And there's actually two that kind of go in the same direction. So thank you, Nuria. Very insightful presentation. I recently came across a company developing a mini ROV designed to support seagrass replanting. Do you see this type of technology playing a meaningful role in advancing restoration efforts, particularly when scaling up interventions across larger areas? And so someone else was asking if you know of any mechanized techniques for seagrass transplantation.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not aware of the mechanic or technology that could be that it's being used successfully for restoring seagrasses. I know that there have been trials. I think the first ones I remember were in Australia, but there have been some, but I don't think it was very no, it didn't work well, I think. I agree that it would be really helpful to have some technology to put the plants. If we have to plant, of course, by divers, we need really like an army to put the plants in place. Because the issue about the scale, it's important for the survival of the plants that you are putting in the place, and also thinking about carbon markets or investors. Probably there will be this there will be also the credits, biodiversity credits, and all these kind of markets where investors could go into. They are not interested on small projects. They need really scale these things up. And also for the how I mean, by divers, it's very the planting, it's we can only work at the small scales, and we actually, as it's mentioned by the people that put the question, it's needed to be able to scale it up. Technology would be good, but I'm not aware of that this is already there, in that it's working well. But yeah, maybe it is. I don't know everything.
Okay, so it would be great to have,
Yes, it would be
mechanical
helpful.
assistance,
Yes.
technology helping out to scaling up such replanting projects. Okay, we have another question about seagrasses being grown in tanks or controlled environments, and whether this would allow the seeds to be obtained artificially. So in this project, we're collecting the seeds from a natural meadow. But do you know of seagrasses being grown in the tanks, like the full biological cycle until seeds can be collected, produced in the tanks and collected in the tanks?
Yeah, this would be great. I don't know if this is, I don't think it's that the life cycle it's closed. What for instance we will do, it's to germinate the seeds and then have the seedlings and put the seedlings in the water. Of course, what it could be done is to put the seeds and to grow the plants in the tanks. You need quite a lot of space to have the clones to spread in the tanks, and then you would have more material to put it in the water than just a single shoot. But yeah, then it would be also nice to be able to close the life cycle, to have to produce that the seagrasses that you have in the tanks produce seeds, flowers that you can fertilize, and then seeds, and then this would be very good. I don't know. I'm not aware of that this is done, but still the first phase of from seeds growing clones with few plants, this could be possible.
Yeah, then you also have, like, for extension, that might be interesting, and then you also need to keep in mind the genetic diversity that you want to reach.
Yes,
in the replanted meadow, I guess, because this is also what makes it stronger in terms of facing whatever event can come up after the replanting. Okay, the next question goes towards the monitoring phase after the replanting activity. So you mentioned most of the project do not have a very long extended monitoring phase. And the question is, why is it so important to extend the monitoring phase?
Well, yeah, first, because you don't know what happens with the plants, because when I showed this graph about the time scale, that it depends on the species, that could be from few years up to several decades, and for Posidonia probably it's 100 years or even more. If you don't monitor, you don't know how this is growing or how it is evolving, how it's the material that you have put in place, if actually it's spreading, if it's occupying the area that you were aiming to recover. And probably you will not, well, at least in the species I'm now thinking here in the Mediterranean, even with Cimodosia, probably we will not be able to see clones spreading after, yeah, well, spreading a little bit, but not really spreading, yeah, growing a lot in area. After yeah, 4 5 years or 6 years. So, and this is relatively fast. And with this, okay, your material would have clones of a certain size, but this will not cover a lot of extent. So because the recovery, it takes some time, it's important to follow up this material that you put in the water, because otherwise, well, you will not know if with your intervention the yeah, you have achieved the target, the objective, or not. And also to see if maybe it's growing, but it's not growing as fast as you were expecting, or you can see that it's surviving and growing. Then maybe you can decide to do another intervention to scale it a bit up, and then accelerate the recovery also.
So in other words, it's also a matter of having the monitoring phase reflect adequately like the process, the time process, sorry, of recovery, like because it's quite slow, it's gradual and it's pretty slow. I mean, in terms of project, it's not a 1 year recovery of ecosystem services or functioning of carbon storage, it's longer.
No,
So
exactly.
it's also a matter of making sure you can reflect this recovery through the monitoring.
Yes, and also if one of the aims of the project is to compensate for carbon, to have carbon credits, of course, the plants that you are putting in place, they will not start capturing carbon immediately. Probably it will take 2 3 years before it starts accumulating something. And this accumulation of carbon, the accretion of sediment and then the carbon, it's about at the 1 or 2 millimeters per year. So you will not be able to detect this accretion until until 5 years or so. And also then the plants that you put, assuming that they survive and they start growing, they will start spreading, and then the carbon will not be also immediately at the new places colonized, so there is some delay. And so actually in order to recover or to have some carbon accumulated there, you need some time, like some decades, or well, from 5 to more, to be able to detect a change and increase.
Yeah. And this is just for the audience to know, this is something that the administrations are actually taking into account, because they do ask for like a solid and a certain time of monitoring post-transplant in order to be able to assess whether it was a success or not, your restoration intervention. Next question. So we have someone asking about modeling approaches. Could models be designed to predict plant growth and help with restoration project of seagrasses, and maybe also to monitor existing meadows under climate change? So how do models help or are integrated in your research, in your work, in terms of restoration?
Yes, models are really useful because, well, first, because these time scales that are not they cannot be short very often, they take some decades. They are very useful to have an idea of how much, which could be your expectations, if they are feasible or not, and also because it's in this long term. Okay, hopefully you have live and you can continue. Well, there will be people monitoring this, but it's very useful to have an idea of how the project that you are putting in place, it will develop. In terms of also with the climate change, it also helps because you can play with scenarios of warming, for instance, that's quite evident. Then depending on the species that you plant, they are more thermal tolerant to warming at the site where you are putting the plants, or less. For instance, Cimodocea, the one that we will be using or we will work with in Tenerife, this is a species that it has a behavior like a tropical seagrass. So the conditions in Tenerife, these are relatively cold waters for this plant. So actually warming it's expected to enhance the growth and the performance of the Cimodocea in the next year. So in this case, it will help. And also models are also useful, apart from doing these projections in the future. They are also very helpful for designing the planting strategy itself. And this actually we are using this in the project, in the Ocean Citizen project, with these colleagues from the IFIS, this Complex Systems Institute, also in the Balearic Islands, that it's very useful because, okay, they use these models about interactions between the shoots, the plants themselves, and then they can identify critical densities above which survival it's more probable than less. So these models are also very helpful to identify the size and the density of the patches, or the patches that we have to put in the water to start the recovery.
Okay, thank you. I believe you just have answered the next question, but I'm going to read it anyway. So someone else was asking or mentioning that asking whether based on scientific evidence, lower biotic variability, such as temperature, salinity, etc., was a key factor for successful marine restoration. Or whether that was not the primary driver. And by what you said, I understand that this is really, really much related to what species we are talking about.
Yes.
As you just said, that Cimodocea nodosa would benefit from a change in temperatures.
Yes. Especially in thinking that it will be planted in Tenerife. So it's important the local conditions.
And where? Okay, which species and where, exactly. Okay, so we have another 2 questions, and I think then we're going to have to wrap it up because we're over time. But these are very interesting questions, so I'm glad you're all being curious about this topic. Do you find Posidonia in the area? I believe this question is from Sol. I guess you're asking about Tenerife. And if so, can you comment on how Posidonia and Cimodocea nodosa interact? So do you know, is there any place where the 2 coexist?
About Posidonia in Tenerife, there is no Posidonia oceanica. Posidonia oceanica, it's restricted, the presence it's only in the Mediterranean, but in the Mediterranean, they coexist, but they coexist in areas where Posidonia is, the density of Posidonia is very little. So normally they coexist. You have areas without Posidonia, and then there is Cimodocea. And if they are mixed, it's because Posidonia is really low density. Normally, what we find is across the depth gradient, we may have some Cimodosia at the beginning. Then we have the meadow, the Posidonia meadow. The Posidonia can be down to 35, 40 meters. And sometimes then we have another band of Cimodosia in the deep water. But yeah, normally they are separated because Cimodosia is small and it cannot compete for, I mean, it would not have light if it's inside Posidonia. And also that it would not have a space because Posidonia is really packed, the shoots and the rhizomes.
Posidonia is a too fierce competitor for the Cimodoceno dosano.
Yes, if the conditions are good, yes.
Yeah.
If there is light, low nutrients, yes.
Okay. Thanks. Last question would be is about whether there is anoxy in the sediments below the meadow, and is there any CH4 production as it happens in lakes?
Sorry?
So is there anoxy in the
Sí.
sediments below the meadow? And they're also asking whether there is methane. I'm not sure how to pronounce that in English.
Yes.
Methane production, as you can see it happen in lakes.
Yeah, there is a little bit. Yeah, there is. It's anoxic. Actually, the sediment in the below the Sigras meadows, anoxia starts after a few centimeters already. So yeah, it's anoxic very rapidly. Regarding the methane, well, there is a little bit of methane. This is actually started. It's measured from recent times. There are colleagues at IMEDEA that are also doing this analysis, but in the sea in the sea with the salinity where it's the salinity is high, methane, the production of methane, it's very little in this kind of natural systems, and this is because, well, there is plenty of sulfate. So first of all, the first anaerobic bacteria that will be working, it's the sulfate reducers. So there is a lot of sulfide, hydrogen sulfide production, but methane, it's little, and it's different. What it drives, if there is production of methane or not in lakes or in the sea, it's basically the salinity. So at high salinity, methane emissions or production is very little.
Okay. Great. So I think that covers all the questions for today. Thank you all so much for asking about seagrass restoration and being so interacting so much with us. We're going to wrap it up. I'm just sharing in the chat the link for the next webinar in case you want to join. Episode 3 will be next Tuesday at the same time. We will probably book an entire hour so we can attend the questions. And it will be on Gorgonian restoration presented by researchers from CIAP-CSIC. And then another link I wanted to share with you, shared it at the beginning of the presentation, is this one from the project's website, especially the resources. So this is where you will find, among other things, the 3-part webinar mini-series that was presented last fall, in case you want to know more about these blue forests. And basically this 3-part mini-series sets the basis to understanding how they function, where we can find them, etc., etc. So again, thank you so much, and hopefully see you next Tuesday. Bye-bye.
Bye.